Hey guys, it's Friday evening and it's time for the Retro Buzz, and we've got a very happy, very excited Mr. Glen Palomino, Planetomato, Planamento, with us as
Plan a
his.
memo.
Yeah, you've got your Star Wars Yoke. You're what, 13,000 away from your goal?
13,000 away from 30. Yeah, it's only been live a week today. A week today, 7 in the morning. We're at 28,300, I think, or 600, something like that. So
1300, not 13,000.
right. We're very close. I'm expecting like a baby, newborn baby, any minute now. We're going to cross that threshold, and the first Kickstarter is a success.
See,
so quick.
Before the show, you told me 13,000, but in reality, it's 1,300.
1,300. Yeah, you know me. What's money? It don't matter to me.
Well, I'm glad we have this guy here, Mr. Cooltoy. He doesn't look like Chris Jericho this week, but we have him in all his glory because you got the hat on today, so you're not looking like Jericho. I think you did that to like really get on Stevie last week, I think.
Yeah, I gotta blend back into my normal routine. I get 50% of people telling me where's the hat, and other 50% of my comments tell me it's hat. So,
well, it's great to have you on here, and then we also have a special guest that he was here before, but then he broke my TriCaster, but he's back. We've got Mr. RGT85, Sean Long. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Did you get the post-dated check for the TriCaster? I know I post-dated it a couple years.
Well,
but
I just have to. I honestly just have to say it was great, the fact that you managed to kind of stay in the chat room and be on video, and you guys were miming, and I could hear you, but they couldn't the last time. So kudos for you for that, my friend. And it looks
sometimes
like
you got to improv.
Dougie's having a little bit of problem, it looks like, so we're gonna get that resolved here. But I think he's gonna switch around his resolution or whatnot. But Glenn, why don't you kick us off here?
He looks great. He looks great.
And tell about the guest here.
Well, yes. Well, we have the one and only RGT85. He actually has a new book out, which we were going to talk about a little bit here. This is a nice little book I got off Amazon, and it's about this system right here, which is always a little bit of money and tons when you try and pick it up. When you got the real deal here, we have an original Tower of Power unit here, Sega. And RGT is a big Sega fan. He's a big gaming fan overall with everything, but I definitely know he's got his heart in Sega. And it's an honor having RGT85 online with us today with sound. It's great. I'd like to hear him.
It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be here.
Well, did we lose Doug? Is he back? Or is he
gone? I'm working on getting Doug. I think, Doug, if you can hear us, try to call back in and get going. But one of the things you have is that brand new book. And so why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the book while we work on getting Dougie back in?
Sure. So this is the complete Sega 32X guide. A lot of people ask me why I decided to do a book on the Sega 32X. I'm a very impulsive person, and I literally just woke up one day last year. I believe it was like in April, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to write a book on the 32X because I want to. And so I just started like figuring it out on my own. And then I actually had a buddy who I've worked with on Nintendo Enthusiast website for years. And I ran the idea by him, and I showed him like a prototype of like my design for the book, which was absolutely horrible because I'm not very good at graphics and things like that. And he was like, you know, I have some editing software, you know, I could maybe design the book for you if you want. You know, we'll talk the business end of it. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. So we ended up coming up with this. I basically just wrote everything for it. It has basically just all the information about the 32X, reviews for every game, including Sega CD 32X games as well. There's a lot of promotional materials, canceled games that didn't come out for the system, stories from people like Blake J. Harris from Console Wars, Al Nilsson from Sega, Modern Vintage Gamer, GameSack, and then it's got a bunch of cool advertisements for the 32X from all across the world. They had some very interesting ads in Europe, of all places. I think those were my favorite things. But yeah, it's 99 pages long. You know, I didn't want to make it too long or anything like that. But it came out, it came out pretty good. It's a pretty legit book. You can get it on Amazon. Just type in 32X book and it'll pop right up. I believe Ryan from Castlemania Games also still has some available as well. The only difference is you have to pay shipping on those. It's $19.99 at either store, but you have to pay shipping with Ryan. But those books are signed. So if you care about some homeless looking man's scribble on the book, then that might interest you. But yeah,
if you want to save some money, it looks like it's $17.23, and you don't need the homeless man's signature. If you don't,
there you go.
There you go. See.
Now, do you know there's a fun fact for everyone? Do you know why it's only 99 pages?
Tell us a wise one.
Anyone? Oh, simple. Mine didn't make the cut. He didn't like what I wrote. So my
there actually is a reasoning behind it though, because if you look at me and my buddy the designer were talking about it. If you look at it, so like every page on the bottom has the little Sega 32X mushroom and then a number. And so we were looking at it and he was like, well, we could do like another page on it. And I was like, yeah, we could. And then he was like, but you know what? If I do it, because it's completely centered, I'd have to make the thing bigger for every one of them. I was like, oh, don't worry about it then. We'll just do it 99. Like, why not?
Yeah, sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, like honestly, it didn't take me very long to write everything. Like I would say I had everything pretty much written in about 2 months. Like I would just spend, because I have all the 32X games cartridge wise, and I'm pretty familiar with them anyways. But some of the games I wasn't didn't really know much about them. Like FIFA 96 didn't come out stateside, so I had to get a repro of that cartridge. And then like a couple other games like I just wasn't super familiar with or whatever, but I would just play the games. And then the CD32X games, I just downloaded ISOs of them because I'm not whatever. And then so I wrote everything up and I just threw it in a Google Doc, and then he just got to work on the designing aspect, and that probably took a lot longer than actually writing it.
And some people,
I'll tell you, it's impressive because I'm not a writer, and it was a good read. I mean, I sat down, I read it from cover to cover, and there was some information I didn't know in there, and it was pretty knowledgeable. And it's just really cool just seeing some of the older like advertisements, kind of remember them, which is kind of more weird. But it's a shame because the 32X kind of put such a bad taste in so many people's mouths back in the day. But it's not a bad attachment. For some reason back then, because of the Saturn coming out, people just thought it was as a cash grab. But it actually added more colors, more processing power, scaling and zoom. It added a lot to the machine, and it's just a shame that it came out at a time where people just wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that's really what it boils down to, was the timing of it. I think if they would have done their original plan with the Saturn as far as the release of the Saturn, that the 32X might have had a longer life cycle, and there probably would have been more games for it, because like the whole arcade stuff would have been, I think, the strongest thing about the 32X, because obviously your Super Nintendo and your Genesis weren't able to do 3D polygons. Like, yes, you had the Super Effects chip, and you had a few first person shooters on the Saturn or on the Super Nintendo, a couple on the Genesis, but you didn't really have all that you could do with it. And I think the 32X, I mean, because when you look at Virtua Fighter on the 32X versus the initial release of Virtua Fighter on the Sega Saturn, sure, the Sega Saturn version looks a little better, but the Virtua Fighter on the 32X actually plays better because it wasn't as rushed. And I think that, you could have had things like Daytona USA and other popular Sega arcade games from that time come to the system. Daytona USA was actually in development for the system.
Right.
Now, how good would it have been? That's another question for another. I mean, Virtua Racing Deluxe on the 32X was really good. So I think they could have made it work. It's just, it didn't really have a real chance to get going and do anything.
Right, because these were also first generation titles. So as they got to learn to program the architecture, I think Daytona USA definitely could have come out.
Yeah, and the problem was Sega of America hated it.
Absolutely.
Yes, it did.
That's one of the big stories in the book, that Al Nilsson, who was working at Sega at that time, like, that's how the book starts. I spent my entire time at Sega trying to kill the 32X. It's like they didn't like it. They did not like it, but you know, it's a cool little system. I think it has a decent story to tell, and I tried to tell it.
So even if you didn't have a 32X or played a 32X, could you get the book and still get into it?
Maybe. I mean,
you're supposed to say, yes, absolutely, go buy the book.
Yeah, but then if people buy it and then they're like, he lied to me, then I'll get a bad review on Amazon. Like, I've already gotten like 2 troll reviews on Amazon, like, already. And that's why it's, yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised, but please don't increase that.
That's pretty good. You only got 2. Considering,
I mean, if you like Sega and you like retro gaming, you know, you would have at least heard of the 32X. Like, I would buy a book on the Neo Geo, and I'm not the biggest, you know, I'm a very, very casual Neo Geo fan. I do not own a Neo Geo. All the Neo Geo games I've played have just been either in the arcades or on things like the Switch with the hamster ports that they do for, like, you know, Samurai Showdown and stuff like that. So if you're interested in Sega stuff and you like retro gaming, you'll probably have some interest in it. If you're not interested in Sega or retro gaming, you probably wouldn't care.
I'm gonna have to.
I think Sean's probably underselling it a little bit, because just from a historical aspect, it has a lot of information in it. Like I said, you may not be the biggest Sega 32X fan to begin with, but you're probably going to have a lot more respect for the console and everything that went into it and came out from it just from reading this book, because there's a lot of things, like, I'm a diehard Sega fanboy and have been through and through, and even reading this, there was tons of stuff that I didn't know. I know that RGT had a sibling or a significant other named RGT85. Apparently he was having a rough day when he was doing the signatures, so I've got a 1-of-1 RGT85 signature. But other than that, like I said, this is actually a really great book. So, and it's easy to digest. Like I said, it's not.
That's a pirate copy.
Pirate copy.
Yeah. It didn't come from him.
That was Sean's partner that he's selling it from. He didn't have an extra copy, so he quickly signed it, right, Sean?
It was his ghostwriter, yeah.
My hand hurts so much because, like, Ryan from Castlemania got like 200 of them. I was like, oh, that doesn't sound bad. And then all the books finally came in from Amazon, because I everything is through Amazon. So, like, if I want an author's copy, I just order it off Amazon. They print it there and then they ship it to me. So, like, I had 200 books just like sitting in my house, and I was like, ooh, this looks like a lot more than I realized. And then, like, I just started signing them, and like 20 or 21 into it. And I was like, my hand, my crippling arthritis. And I was like, man, this is a lot.
Michael Barnett in the chat room wants to know is, if you were going to write another book, I'm assuming based on another type of retro console, what would you like to cover with that?
Well, I actually was thinking about another one, and it was another obscure console, but Jeffrey Wittenhagen, who does Hagen's Alley books, he does a lot of books on retro systems and stuff. I actually, a couple of years ago, I actually contributed to one of his books. He actually just did the system that I was thinking of doing, and that was the Virtual Boy. Just because that's another, like, you know, kind of weird system. But when I was a kid, I don't know what the hell was wrong with me as a kid, but when I was a kid, like, I just had a weird desire for the weird systems. Like, I remember one Christmas, I was told that I could get a Sega Saturn, a Sony PlayStation, or a Virtual Boy, and I chose the Virtual Boy. Like no question, because I remember I used to go to KB Toys and they had a Virtual Boy set up there, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And, like, every time I would go, they had these little pamphlets as well, and I'd always take a pamphlet with me, and my mom would be like, you already have one of those pamphlets. I'd be like, shut up, I want another. And then I would just sit there and play the Virtual Boy. So I really love the Virtual Boy, but, you know, obviously he just did a book on it, and, you know, tons of people do books on similar stuff, but I wouldn't really want to, you know, try to step on his toes or anything, because he's a buddy of mine. So I don't know, you know, I've thought about doing something, you know, maybe with the Sega Saturn, but it would have to be, if I did a Saturn thing, it would have to be North America only, just because A, there's so many Japanese games, and B, there's so many Japanese games that I don't know because they're, you know, not translated or anything. So that would just be absolutely just probably too much. But I don't, you know, I might, it just depends. Really, this was just a passion project. It was just, you know, the world of books, you don't really make a whole hell of a lot of money. My whole goal with this book was to make back my initial investment, and then everything else I was happy with. And really, my investment, I don't consider my time to be part of the investment. I just consider it, part of my work or whatever. I paid my editor X amount of dollars, which wasn't very much because I don't know, he was stupid, I guess. And he gets a percentage of all the sales. So, he makes his money. And then I paid I had a special ghost editor, Joe from GameSack. I basically paid him like $100, and I was like, all right, here's the deal. You're going to look over all my reviews. You're going to look over all my tech information because I'm not releasing something that has misinformation, and you are the biggest nerd I know when it comes to this stuff. So just look over everything. And he was cool enough to do that.
Wait, was that before or after you got your US Sega Tower of Power? Did he review it before or after you had gotten that?
It was before.
Okay. Good call on that one.
Yeah. But he's over it now. But yeah, so yeah, I think so. He helped me with that, and that was a tremendous help because I didn't want there to be, because I'm definitely not, when it comes to retro stuff, I feel like there's very hardcore dedicated people who are like RGB modding all their systems and soldering crap on there and stuff, and like that's awesome. And then there's people that are very casual, and that's cool too. And I'm sort of in the middle. Like I like the more advanced stuff of retro gaming, but I don't necessarily understand the tech specs behind it. And I also like the casual stuff where the cheap AliExpress $30 500 game in one handheld system. I can still appreciate that. So I kind of fall in the middle. So I just wanted someone who was more knowledgeable on the tech side of things to look over the stuff. So Joe was cool enough to do that.
Yeah, Jim's saying he just ordered your book. He said he got he got the 32X when it came out, and then Michael Barnett says you might need a 3D glasses to read the book if you did it on the 3DS. Or I'm sorry, the Virtual Boy. Excuse me.
The Virtual Boy, yeah, and everything would be red and black. Like Jeff, I will say Jeffrey and Jeffrey. I don't know if like he got in my head with it, but like that's how his book is. Like it's all the pages are in red and black. Like it looks so good, and it's like even if I did one on the Virtual Boy, I don't think it would necessarily look as good as his came out. So maybe as time passes, then I'll take a stab at it, but we'll see.
So. I don't know. I know, Glenn, you had it, and I think, Doug, you had the 32X. I had the Sega Master System. I had the Sega Genesis. I skipped over that, got the Saturn, and then I had Sega CD, and I, like everybody else, sold them. But Dreamcast was my go-to. Like, I love the Dreamcast. It's like my favorite across the board, even to this day.
It's such a sad story. That is such a sad story because even today, I was just talking about this the other day, that if you took a Dreamcast game today, like right now, and you played it, it could pass almost for a current gen title. A PS1 game could not. And it was that advanced. It was a great console, but again, Sega had turned off so many people during that Saturn 32X era, and then piracy really came in really big and really sealed the fate for it. But that is probably the best thing they ever came out with. It's a fantastic system. And if Sega ever came back, I'd love to see Dreamcast 2. There's that much love for that Dreamcast system.
Well, Glenn, my son, he's 7, and he played it for the first time when I got it. I got it for like $120 at a local retro shop, with warranty and everything. Because like many of us, we sold it, and my son's like, "How old is this, Dad?" I said, "This was like when I was young. This was like 20, 30 years ago." And he's like, "Why? It looks just as good as everything else that's out there." And that's to prove your point. That's my son who's 7. Plays Fortnite and Minecraft. To him, it looks a lot better than that. So,
Right. Well, what RGT said a minute ago, some of these systems, like he gravitated, he said, towards these quirky systems, and that's exactly what I did. 32X. I have 3 Virtual Boys.
I have 2.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
Well, to be honest, I was helping repair the LCD screens on them. There's a solder fix. And I was trained by someone in the Virtual Boy forums to help him out, but it just came to be like too much. But these systems, what happens is like the 32X, it's been bad-mouthed for years and years. So people think that's fact. Then a book like this comes out, and you start reading, you find out if you never touched it, maybe they were wrong. and then you get it and you find out, you know what, it was a good system. The Virtual Boy is a good system. It was just bad press because it was one color at a time where
Mhm.
there were color games out. But you can't always rely on the internet being factual for everything, because 32X is a fine system. The Virtual Boy was a great system, but they get so much bad press over the years. It's just shunned into a corner. It's a shame.
Yeah, I
And a
mean,
lot of it stems from bad, support from Sega America as a whole. And like
yep.
Sean had alluded to, they wanted to kill that the moment it came through because they wanted to focus on, what was in their future as far as the Saturn and, the Dreamcast later down the road. They didn't want to support this secondary kind of like fill-in system is how they viewed it. So it got, little to no support from Sega America. And then what support it did get, it was very hard to actually find games, at least in my area when I grew up. I had this Sega 32X. It got discounted very quickly and early into its lifespan, so that immediately put a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth. The early adopters that went out and bought this new add-on that expanded their Genesis capabilities and gave them all these great games, but when it came down to it, they ended up getting undercut by a price 6 months, 3 months down after they paid full price for it. And then when it came to actually trying to find games, there was typically only like 3 or 4 of them ever on the shelves at my local KB stores or Toys R Us. It was very hard to actually find the 32X games, let alone the 32X CD games.
Now you guys are gonna make me go buy one. Because I
Do it.
It actually is. It actually is, and they're not expensive. Although they're starting to. I think RGT will tell you the prices are going up now, quite a bit. But there's some really good gems on there. I mean, it's even in the book. I agree with the. I didn't play the FIFA, the sports games and stuff in there, but the Polygon games like Metalhead. I love Metalhead. I do like the Star Wars. It's very hard. It's some boring on some levels. The Star Wars arcade. There's a lot of good games on there. Space Harrier. It's a great arcade port. That's something you couldn't have done on the Genesis alone, and it plays great on the 32X.
And it has the best console version of Mortal Kombat 2.
Yep.
Like, because the Saturn, the only one that comes close is the Saturn, but the Saturn has the Shang Tsung issue where whenever you do a morph into another character, it lags out for like 2 or 3 seconds.
Right.
And so, yeah, Mortal Kombat 2 on the 32X is technically the most arcade authentic version of that game of that time frame.
So now, John,
and it also had a. Oops, sorry.
No. I was just gonna read the chat. Go ahead. You do that.
I was just going to say it also had the console port of Doom. So, when PC gaming was kind of in its early infancy and, finally starting to catch on with, Windows being everywhere it was. But I had a couple of buddies that were PC gamers, and my family being poor, definitely wasn't going to buy me a computer just to play video games. That was for educational purposes only. That's PCs. But to be able to play Doom on a console was pretty amazing in my opinion. That was one of the first games I picked up for my 32X.
Yeah, and John Diamonin in the chat room, he says, Virtual Racing and Star Wars may be the only good games for the 32X, but he said even then they were outdated already.
Well, because the Saturn was coming out, but I wouldn't say that. The Saturn was on the cusp. The games themselves were still very good. What do you think, RGT?
Yeah, I mean, games like Virtua Fighter, Virtual Racing, and Star Wars Arcade. Those are Knuckles Chaotic too. Those were some of the best games on the system. And I don't think they were outdated because when you look at the launch games for the Sega Saturn, you had Daytona USA, which was a terrible version of that game to where they had to re-release it as Championship Circuit Edition. Look at Virtua Fighter, which was a terrible version of that game where they had to re-release it as Virtua Fighter Remix. So I don't know. It's kind of up to your own interpretation, I feel. But I think they still sort of stood out, especially when you look at the Super Nintendo couldn't do a 3D fighter, the Genesis couldn't do a 3D fighter, the Jaguar tried with Fight for Life, and that was just absolutely broken. Neo Geo, was only doing 2D fighter. So, now the N64 was also on the horizon. The PlayStation 1 was also on the horizon. So eventually, yes, they would have been outdated. But I think at the time of the release of those games, I think they still had a place in the market.
And Matt Scott just said he just bought an autographed copy. So his is going over to Germany.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So make sure you
Appreciate it,
get that
dude.
autograph right on there. Otherwise, it's coming all the way back from Germany, and he's going to want you to redo it.
Just
That's so.
you see
I'm
that
just following
you
up.
see that super chat?
I
You
did
see that
not. Go
super
ahead
chat
and
that
read it.
came in?
I'm jumping back and forth. So what? Go ahead and read
Okay,
it. Whatever.
this from Slings Spade. He wanted me to ask John D, if he's listening, how will the coronavirus affect the production of the new arcade one-up cabs?
Oh.
Man, that virus.
Wait, you mean
I
that
work in the
doesn't?
medical field, so the amount of coronavirus conference calls I've been on this week is astounding. So I literally
Yep.
don't want to hear the word coronavirus
All right. So
ever again.
let's ask it this
Yeah.
way. Let's ask it this.
Doug and I are both in the medical field, so that's what we had all week was that. I don't know. To be honest, I'm going to tell you something. You know, because I have production out in you know, that area of Asia, and they're right now in the Chinese like New Year, and the factories are closed. And I've been told that some of the factories are going to stay closed at least another week to week and a half because of it.
Till
So
February
it could
10th.
actually delay.
Till February
Yeah,
10th.
so it actually could delay a lot of things actually.
This is why we told you guys back when these guys were on, when the CES announcements came, we said that's the reason they don't give any launch dates, because things like this is beyond their control and there's nothing that they can do about it. But it's making me wonder, Doug, the flight sticks that we got from Glen, where did they come from? Glen, what are you doing to us?
And I licked all of them before I shipped them. So
Well, if you
I
licked
got some
them,
extra
then
germs out there.
then we're good.
I was wondering why mine came with a little bottle of Purell inside.
But I did want to, you know, we were talking about Sean's book, and we have that pulled up. But you know, I wanted to show everybody, if you do want to get involved. So it sounds better coming from me than Glenn saying it to you. But so I'll pimp it out for him. Go over to the Kickstarter here. Glenn is very, very close. He's getting very close. And here it is in dollars, not in yen, so nobody can get confused. But 22 days to go, Glenn. And some people were asking, if you go over the mark, what is the focus going to be on? Are you just going to just continue mass produce this stuff, or are you going to actually come out with something else that now you can fund something else?
Well, you know, obviously we got to make the amount of product for the people placing the orders. Fortunately, I'm not signing anything. Maybe I will. I don't know. But now that RGT saying was hurting his hand after a couple, maybe I'll leave that alone.
You better sign it.
But you know, if we do hit a stretch goal, it's a far stretch goal for $50,000. We're just going to make sure it's also compatible with the Atari Arcade. But honestly, we have other plans. And I've said it before. You know, we're definitely looking at steering wheels with a gear shifter and pedals. We have a light gun technology that is a cutting edge light gun technology coming out. Other controllers. So this is really just showing to me by the amount of how fast it's going to hopefully meet the goal so quick, within maybe under 10 days, that people do want to have these authentic controllers to use at home. So, you know, lots of arcade machines out there are custom controls. I mean, look at like a Battle Zone with the dual sticks, or like I said, the light gun or steering wheels, or games like that are very hard to play, like Frontline. I love Taylor's Frontline, but you can't play that well the way it is. So I have all these things planned out, and since the Kickstarter is working so well, and it's going to help us fund things faster and get them out, and give extra bonuses, like, you know, like all the pledge gifts that are out there. We'll expand and all that. So the answer is yes. I mean, it's going to really help me expand and give you guys, again, very high quality, inexpensive things you can use at home or in the arcade, or just take to bed with you, like my Sega. Take it to bed.
Oh, brother. Could you see this? A GRS version of that, Doug? That's going to be like, oh my.
Hey, I'll buy it. I'm a sucker
Yeah.
for Sega.
Yeah.
If Glenn starts pimping out some GRS Sega products, I'll buy them. Not gonna lie.
We definitely need a Dreamcast Mini. I mean, they definitely should do that. There's no one other thing I was a little disappointed of when they came up with the Tower of Power. I felt they had a huge missed opportunity. When you got your Sega Mini, my other friend, 8-Bit Flashback, kind of does this already. You can put NFC or a small SD card in a 32X top and the Sega CD bottom, and you could actually purchase those independently, and you could have added Sega CD games when you connected it via NFC. And the 32X drop down, that was a huge miss on their part. I would have went out there and bought a bunch of these just so I can dock it to a mini Sega CD and
Who
a
are you
mini
kidding? You would have bought
32X.
5 of each. Like, who are you kidding?
Well, yes, but that's like stuff that was a missed opportunity that they could have sold more games. They could have had a higher price point by selling you another, $90 Sega CD attachment with a bunch of ISO games on it, and then a 32X attachment. Because to be honest, like RGT was saying a second ago, and myself, the 32X, there wasn't a huge production run to begin with, and the prices are going up, so people are going to find it harder to get one to play the games in an original form factor.
So brings up an interesting subject, because this is something I've been chewing on the last couple weeks. Is I want to kind of talk to Sean about this, and I'm sure we've seen videos where you've worked with the arcade 1-up cabinets. You've kind of gotten your hands on with some of those things. What's your take on this virtual pinball boom that's been happening? I mean, we've seen companies like Toy Shock come out. I've got one over here. Arcade 1-up announces one at CES. We know ATGames is working on one behind the scenes, which we'll probably see later this year. And I know there's a couple other companies that are doing it. Is this a fad? Is this something, in your opinion, that is going to be short-lived, or do you think that this is the real deal and it's going to be around for a while?
I personally feel that it won't. I don't think it'll be necessarily as successful as the arcade 1-up machines have been, as far as people, really wanting to get them and people still wanting continuous ones. Pinball is just, it's not a scene that I'm super familiar with. I remember playing stuff like Batman pinball, Terminator pinball, which was one of my favorites, Jurassic Park, back in the 90s when, arcades were more frequent. I think pinball is popular. I'll definitely be getting a virtual pinball table just to check it out, because I think it sounds absolutely fascinating. But to me, I don't think the collectability aspect will be quite as high as the arcade 1-ups are, because I don't know, it's just weird, like seeing when you get the arcade 1-up built and you start playing it for a while, you're like, I need more of these. I want more of these. I want more of these arcade games I grew up with. Whereas I'm not quite sure pinball has that same high nostalgia, and I could be wrong. Like, I know there's a lot of pinball communities out there, but at least for me personally, I don't have nearly as many attachments to pinball machines as I do arcade machines. But that being said, if they were to release like a Batman one, like, I would buy it day one, and I'll probably buy like the Star Wars one on day one.
Yes, I think we're all on that front there. The Star Wars one is like the be all end all right now. Yeah, Doug's got his hand up. But you're right. You're absolutely right. I know my wife will be happy to hear that, because she's like, you have all these arcade 1-ups running down. You got the Legends, and then you've got the Toy Shock. Does that mean now you're going to fill up another room with just virtual pinball? So she's probably not going to be thrilled to have all this. Yeah. No, we can't do that. No, we're not even going to go. We're not going to go there. But it's interesting, because I see a lot of people have been, they're like, yeah, this is really, really cool. But, I don't know. I'm one of those guys, like, with, like you're saying, with pinball, it's a novelty thing, right? Like, you might play. I don't play pinball as much as I play the other arcades. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so. I mean, I could sit down, I could sit down and play my arcade one, like my Turtles cab, and play it start to finish, either Turtles or Turtles in Time, and not want to do anything else. I want to sit there and play the game. I can sit there and play, Final Fight or Strider and, Mortal Kombat, all that stuff. And you just sit there and you keep wanting to play it. It's relaxing. Whereas pinball to me has always been, I'll play it for, 5 to 15 minutes and then I'm done. Like, I could go, for a long period of time without playing it. It just doesn't really bring me into it quite as much. Even, when I go to a barcade or something like that, like, I would say 90% of my time is done on arcade machines, messing around, and 10% is done with the pinball machines. But I'm not good at pinball either, so that might have something to do with
it's fun. My daughter and my son, they'd never played pinball ever until I got the Toy Shock machine, and then they were like, oh, this is cool. Some folks in here are even asking in the YouTube chat. They're saying nobody's ever asked for a Metal Slug cabinet from Arcade 1-up. I think I love Metal Slug. I played on my Legends
People
Ultimate
have been asking
all
for that
the
since
time.
day one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought the
that's
book-
SNK
huge one
goodness.
that
Oh,
before.
Doug's like, yeah, that was me. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that'd be
Now,
a fun game. And they want to know your
the one thing
opinion.
I want to ask RGT, because I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I seem to do that a lot, and I am sorry, man. but
You know
I
what
do
it
tend
is
to do
though,
that.
and it's not. And I want to put this out there. It's not Glenn. He wears these wireless headphones, and I honestly think there's somewhat of a delay between that and the hearing aid.
Could be.
Just
Could be.
saying.
Is it that or the cotton balls you put in so you can't hear me? Which is it?
No, go ahead, Glenn. Go,
But
and I'll
actually,
get back to the
I just
question
want
then
to ask
after.
RGT. People don't always get to interact with with YouTubers in this fashion, and RGT85 is obviously a YouTuber. He's had a very successful channel. But RGT, you've had other, I guess, fingers in the gaming industry, right? You didn't just come out off the street with nothing. Didn't you have like work for a company, or you wrote articles or something along those lines in the past before you started your channel?
Yeah, I've been around since 2012 in video game stuff, which a lot of people don't realize. But I actually started on a very small website. I knew one of the writers personally, and I was like, "What are you doing writing for this website? What's that like?" And he was like, "Oh, it's pretty cool." And I was like, "Yeah, what's cool about it?" He was like, "Oh, I get companies send me games." I was like, "Wait, you get free games?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh." I was like, "Can I write for it?" He was like, "I don't know. Can you write?" And like, you know how they say in school, like kids are either good at like English and history, or they're either good at math or science. I was
Right.
terrible at math or science, but I could bullshit my way through English and history class like it was nothing. So I've always been good at writing. It's just nothing I really ever pursued. And so they gave me a little trial run, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're pretty good." So yeah, I started there in 2012. And I remember it was just so freaking cool. Like, I was getting packages from like Konami and Capcom because I was doing a lot of 3DS stuff for the site. And yeah, like I remember Capcom sent me like 3 copies of Resident Evil Revelations on the 3DS, and they sent me a cool little beanie that was modeled after Chris's beanie in the game, and it had like a headphone slot in it. So, and it came with a headphone as well. Just little cool things like that. And so yeah, I started doing that. The website kind of started quieting down. The owner of the website ended up becoming like a big Twitch streamer, and then people just started going their own ways. And so I was doing a lot of Nintendo stuff on that website because I was the one doing a lot of 3DS stuff. I got a Wii U on launch day when nobody else on the site had it. So I was covering a lot of Wii U games. I was like, well, covering Nintendo stuff is fun. Why don't I try to find a Nintendo site to work for? And I ended up working for Nintendo Enthusiasts. I just sent out a couple samples of my writing, and they were like, "Okay, we'll start you out, but you're starting out on the the ground floor here. You're just gonna do news. You're not gonna do reviews or anything like that until we say so." I was like, "All right, that's cool. It won't last because I'll end up taking over this site." And essentially, I did. I ended up becoming editor in chief of that, and then they had a YouTube channel, and it had like 1,000 subscribers on it, and I was like, "Holy shit! They got 1,000 subscribers. I want to do videos for this." And so I talked to the site owner. I was like, "Hey, I want to make videos." And he was like, "You ever made a video before?" "No." "Do you know how to edit videos?" "No." "What do you have?" I was like, "I got like a $50 webcam. I've got a little like house lamp and Windows Movie Maker." And he was like, "You serious?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm serious." Like that's what I got. And so he was like, "All right, we'll give it a try." And so at that same time, my editor for the book, Jason, he was hired by Nintendo Enthusiasts. He lives in Canada, and he had like a $3,000 camera, an editing team. He was filming all of his videos at ANC Games in Canada, so he had a great backdrop. And I'm literally in my bedroom filming with my little shitty webcam. So like it was just him and I doing videos, and I hated him. I hated him so much because his quality was good and mine was shit. But eventually it ended up for the longest time, like that's one thing. That's complete side note, but that's one thing I see so many people that do YouTube do it wrong, is that they invest all this money right at the start. And like, yeah, you can do that, and there is a somewhat of a chance that it's going to pay off for you, but most of the time it won't. And like, I didn't start upgrading my stuff until my channel started growing. I actually did not quit using Windows Movie Maker until 2017. So some of the videos made on RGT85 were actually edited in Windows Movie Maker for you know, the first 2 years of the channel. So, you know, you just gotta you gotta move as you grow, then you start to expand. I used a Sony Handycam until 2018, until I got a DSLR. Like I never wanted to, you know, I didn't want to, you know, overstep my bounds on with it. You know, as the channel grew, I was like, okay, well, I can continue to grow with the channel. So that's just one little side
But I
bit of
think you
information.
also, because I say that a lot to people too. You don't need to go out and buy the biggest and baddest when you're starting out. Once you get going and you feel comfortable, but after you learn how to do stuff, you said something in the beginning there. You said the guy asked you, "Do you know how to edit videos?" You're like, "No." "Do you know how to do this?" "No." You had to learn. You had to learn how to do that stuff before you knew that you needed some other stuff.
Right, exactly. And I mean, you know, you gotta figure out what works for you. Like even today in 2020, I'm not a great editor. I'm a pretty piss poor compared to some of my, you know, acquaintances and friends and stuff like that. So I know when I'm making a video, people aren't probably watching my video because of my great editing. And there are channels that I'll watch because I like their editing, I like their style and stuff like that. I know that I have to get by on personality, and
Yep.
that's fine with me because that's how I've always been. So it just works for me. I know that, you know, if people are feeling what I'm feeling and, you know, like my personality or whatever, then it'll work. And if they don't like it, then it's not going to be something for them. So that's kind of what I've always realized, as far as my channel is concerned, is just I have to get by on personality. So hopefully I come across as personable.
Well, that's why we watch Doug's channel, because Doug's the king of editing. Just being real. I mean,
Oh.
I
He's
don't
got great editing.
I don't do.
Yeah, he does.
I'm not one for editing. I hate editing. That I'll do the live stuff. I can edit on the fly, but not like Doug. Doug is like the master when it comes to editing.
I don't know about that. My college video production professor would probably tell you otherwise. Mainly because in college they taught us and they trained us on Avid, which was the editing tool of the media pros at the time, and I absolutely hated it. So what I would do is just lie and take my project home and edit it in either Premiere or Final Cut Pro at home, and I would just bring it back and tell my producer or my, you know, my professor, I'm like, hey, here it is, here's my project, turn it in. You know, he's like, did you edit this on Avid? Because I didn't see you in the lab today. I'm like, oh yeah, I just popped in, popped out or whatever. And he's like, I know you didn't do it because that transition you use isn't in Avid. And I was like, oh, crap.
Oh man.
Thinking outside the box, though. That's what you got to do. Now,
Absolutely.
I also, so me and Doug, believe it or not, now go get a shot of me and Doug. Get us together. Put us both side by side here. Okay. So Doug works in the medical industry and I work in the metal industry, right? Doug went for broadcasting communications in school, and so did I. Now look at us.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this picture? You got a chiseled stud muffin on one side, and you have me on the other side with a pack.
Doug, this is your future.
I was getting ready to say he's the ghost of Christmas future over here.
Editing, I was editing with just videotape machines. Oh, time-based correcting videotapes. That, oh my god.
And I'm the only guy that works
the pain and the horror.
I'm the only guy that works in video and live production and software for a living. Go figure. And I didn't go to school for it.
Yep. That's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
There it is.
Yeah.
And I was actually in the medical field before doing YouTube full time.
Were you really? Salesman or what did you do?
No, I was a certified pharmacy technician for like 10 years.
Most
they make pretty good
underappreciated
money,
role
man.
in the pharmacy.
Yeah, oh yeah, by far.
Yeah.
Now the money wasn't great. The money got, I would say, because I worked for corporate, you know, I worked for like Rite Aid, you know, companies like that, and I also worked for independent ones. Independent pharmacies were just way better. I felt it was a lot better than the corporate ones because I don't know, I don't really fit in the corporate world all that great. But it's funny because I went to college for a business degree, and then I dropped out and I never got it because I started working and I was like, hey, I'm making money here. What am I gonna go to college for?
But see, that you're telling everybody that's in the chat room right now. So if you want to be a popular YouTuber, you have to go into the medical field like these three. That's what you have to do, because you're going to end up not doing
you
it.
got to start with And you got to start with Windows Movie Maker. You got to
And
start
Windows
at the
Movie
bottom.
Maker.
Boom.
And a 480p webcam.
No, Glenn
would
already
buy-
did
I had
that.
I had a 320.
Glenn was
Man,
already at that.
That was the first thing Steven did, man. Steven was like, "What are you using? Get that thing out of here! I can't even see you."
We're doing a
Well,
high definition
you-
broadcast,
you-
and he's sitting there with a 320, like the size of your Nokia screen, 120 by 3. I'm like, Glenn, I'm like, nobody's gonna see what you're showing. Yeah. If they're looking at this, and I'm like, Glenn, it looks like a giant pixel. I'm like, nobody can see that.
It was a 12 pixel camera. I mean, you know.
Well, we saw every pixel too. We saw that every
all
pixel.
12.
All 12. But no, that's it's pretty cool for people to see, backgrounds. I would have never guessed that with you guys. Now, Sean, are you doing YouTube full time? I know probably people have asked that, or do you kind of do something else to kind of supplement income on the side besides writing books? And
No, I do it full time. I went full time actually 2 years ago next month.
wow, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Happy anniversary.
What was the deciding factor where you said, man, I got to do this full time? Because then there's a lot of guys out there, I think, that think they should go full time into YouTube, and in reality they shouldn't. I'm not a YouTuber, so I don't know. I'm asking this question. Just
What I did is I realized I was living in North Carolina at the time, and I wasn't happy in North Carolina, and I'd been there forever. And I was like, I need to get out of here. I need to change what I'm doing, because I just, as the years were going by, it was just like, just pharmacy technician, and yay, go home, live in North Carolina. Like, I don't like this. So I started, YouTube started making a little bit of scratch for me, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to spend any of this money. And I just sat on all that money and I saved it up. And then I started making, close to what I was making at the day job. And I was like, I'm only really giving this, 50% of my effort, if that, because I would basically wake up at, 8, shower, be at work at 8:30, work till 6. On the drive home, I would figure out what sort of video I wanted to do. And then I would go home, throw some dinner in the microwave, film the video, eat the food while I was editing the video, upload the video, and then go to sleep. And like, that was just my life forever. And like, I just got used to it or whatever. But I was like, I want to try this. I'm gonna bust my ass for a couple months and see how it goes on YouTube. So that's what I started doing. And like, it started working out really good. And I, started, making a little bit of money on it. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to try it full time, So what I did was I set a dollar amount, that, because I also moved when I went full time. That was one of the stipulations I set for myself. It's like, when I move, I want to move and I want to go full time on YouTube. I just want to start fresh and try this. And so the stipulation was, I basically figured out how much it was going to cost me for my rent at my new place, all my utility bills, and just how much I needed per month. And I wanted to save enough to have 6 to 8 months, just in case it didn't work out. And then, I would at least have something to fall back on, and then I could figure out my next move. So once I got that dollar amount is when, and thankfully it all lined up in a perfect timeline for me personally. So I had that dollar amount and I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. And so that's pretty much what I did. I just jumped in, and thankfully it's worked out.
very, very cool. That's something I think everybody aspires to on YouTube. I know Glenn's been doing it. Glenn's still aspiring to do it, right?
Yeah, I'm still aspiring. 4 plus years later, I'm still aspiring, but I'm creeping up. By tomorrow, I think I'll have 15 subscribers. So I'm making my mark.
I mean, it's and the thing about YouTube is, people take it. I think a lot of people take it for granted, because to me, it's like, I know it was, a lot of luck went into it, and you could bust your ass to make YouTube work, and there's still a chance that it wouldn't work out for you. And I guess that's any sort of aspect of life. But like, my philosophy is like, every day I'm thankful that this is what I could do, because I enjoy doing it. But I also know at the same time that like, it could all end tomorrow. And that's why when I see people, spending a whole bunch of money, like, I don't spend shit. Like, I save all my money's saved, and save it for a rainy day. And if the day comes when YouTube goes belly up, because there's no job security with this,
Right.
you don't know what's going to
Right.
happen. So I just take it day by day. But yeah, like I said, thankfully everything has definitely worked out so far for the past 2 years.
Right, and it's a lot of work. People, I mean, it's fun, and I'm glad RGT says he enjoys it. I mean, I enjoy it. I'm sure Cool Twin, everyone else enjoys it, but it's also a lot of work. It's not all fun and games. There's a lot of time involved in doing the whole process. And if you don't push content up, you're not making anything. Since RGT, that's his thing. He's constantly has to be pushing up new content, and that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're also at the mercy of YouTube itself as far as ad revenue is concerned. Like my December and my January views for December 2019, January 2020 were pretty comparable. I might have actually had a little bit more views in the month of January than I did in December, but my revenue is like half for the month of January than it was in December, because there's more advertisers. That's why you see a lot of people take January off or upload a hell of a lot less. And because the money just, nobody's putting money into advertisements. There's no holidays going on. There's no summer stuff going on. January is statistically always the worst month for YouTube. Now, I don't care. Like, I still put out a bunch of videos just because I wanted to put out videos because I find it entertaining. But even for gaming news and games to review and stuff like that, I didn't do a single new game review this entire month of January. The only review I actually did was for the Evercade, because nothing comes out in January. Like, there was nothing that came out that I was like, wow, I need to really review this game. And now with February coming up, like, I've already got like 6 or 7 games that I plan on reviewing, and then the rest of the year will just be crazy. But yeah,
that's kind of how we were right before, like, the CES. Everything was speculation, and then the CES announcements came out, and then everybody's like, okay, now what? Fortunately, like, ATGames is putting out like firmware every week for so we can at least talk about that. But I mean, like, Arcade 1UP, we're waiting for them to launch the machine so we could get our hands on them and talk about it. But we're really, Glenn, we're dead in the water. Well, we got your Tron controller we could talk about.
No, there's still plenty of stuff to talk about. I mean, we have people still doing lots of mods. We have a lot of smaller companies coming out with things. I mean, the bigger companies, it's gonna be a little bit more of a wait, but there's always stuff happening, and we have a lot of people still lined up, for guest hosts. There's a lot of things still happening out there. So, but like I said, January is just going to be a month anyway, because you're getting over the big holiday. So January is usually the recoup month, even for us. But we're still pushing out content. We're still doing it.
Yeah. And John says in the chat room, he says Capcom loves February and March. And Yep, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say they do. That's when they always start putting out their games for the year. Is very early in the year.
I do want to tell everybody, though, after, at the top of the hour, we are going to end the recording part of the show, but we're going to open up a post show that you guys can call in. So for those that are watching us live, you have the ability to call us in. We'll put that link in the chat room here in a little bit, and you can call in and ask Sean questions that you may have, or maybe you got one for Doug or Glenn. That's the time that we'll open it up, and we'll get as many people in as we can. Like last week, we had a full panel, so I couldn't really do anything with it. But we are going to do that this week to give you guys the opportunity to tell Glenn, we like his joystick.
Oh. Hope it's something good. Don't tell me something else.
I mean, that's about as complimentary as it gets there, Glenn. People commenting on your joystick.
See that?
No innuendo whatsoever.
I wouldn't do such a thing to Glenn.
I don't get in trouble. I'm just gonna go right across there.
All right, so let's talk about this for a second. So before the show started, I said to you guys about this. I saw it on PC World, and I know, Sean, you're holding one that you can kind of compare it to this. I personally took my PSP and I modded it and put all kinds of retro games on it, because my Vita, because it's like, well, Vita's being
upgraded version.
Well, the Vita essentially is being a paperweight right now, so I figured, well, I might as well do something with it. But this they showed on PC World, and they said it was actually pretty good for $67.99. You can get this, you know, with a 32 gig SD card in it, and it comes with rainbow colored buttons. Like if you want to do the whole when the Super Nintendo was in, I guess, Japanese when they had it, and it was a different color. But if you want to put those buttons in for PlayStation, or I guess if you want to mod it, good price, bad price. Is this something that people should be taking a look at, maybe picking up? Looks like it's got a 3.5-inch display. Glenn, it would work with your webcam. It's a 320 by 240. It's perfect.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I can talk to it a little bit because I literally have it right in my hands.
Oh, look at this guy. Oh, I got it right here in my hands. Oh, I got it in my hands. I didn't say nothing.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. I was going to let you keep, talking about it. But no, this is, their second attempt at a Pocket Go portable. Previously, they had an earlier rendition that came out earlier in the year. Very good little device, but it suffered one major flaw, and then it had screen tearing issues because of the megahertz they used on the screen. So when you play something like Sonic or Mario, you get these awful screen tears, and it would really just take you out of the game. It was super well priced and very, ergonomically good in the hands, and it just felt better than a lot of the Chinese consoles that were out there. So this is a nice little upgrade. I enjoy it. $60 is a good price. It doesn't have that screen tear. One thing I don't like about it is this little nubby joystick that it's got. Like it's just too small, and like my thumb slides off, and the company actually has like a little makeshift fix in play where they're putting little rubber silicone type overlays over it to where they'll send it to you for free if you bought one of these from them, to where that's supposed to help with traction. Mine is on the slow boat from China, so I haven't got my little silicone overlays yet, so I haven't got to test that out. But as far as how good it is, it plays all your retro consoles all the way, Nintendo, Sega, Atari, plays arcade games via MAME and Final Burn Alpha, plays PlayStation 1 games, although you'll notice it obviously only has one joystick on it, so some of those dual joystick games are not going to be ideal. If you do want dual joysticks, you want to go with this, the RG350. Basically, these are almost identical. They have the same processing power and board inside of them. Screen size is about the same on both of them. It just really comes down to the little functionalities that you want. Do you want dual joysticks, or do you want single joysticks? Do you care? If PlayStation 1 emulation is something you're after, you're probably going to go towards this. But either way, if you're just looking to play a lot of retro games in a very cheap, affordable method and have something that's in your pocket that you don't really have to worry about like destroying. So like if $60 goes out the window versus, $300 for, those official fancy upgraded handhelds that are on the market, you're not going to cry as much if that gets smashed or left in your coat pocket and goes in the dry cleaner or something like that. So I recommend it.
So we didn't talk about this earlier, but this was something that I was going to have us start doing on a weekly basis, is do our pick of the week of what we thought would be a cool item that we could kind of round table. And Doug didn't even know I was going to bring this up. It was in pre-show. I was talking to these guys, and Mister, I have it right there. Listen, I'm not going to the 4-box right now because you guys will see why in a minute, but I'm going to go to the 4-box here in a second. But I think next week we'll see. So he definitely recommends it. $67. You get the SD card with it, 32 gig. Now you guys know why I wasn't going to go to the 4-box right away, because I wanted to get that out without laughing. Because of you, there's a shortage in the world for those masks. You do know that, right?
Hey, man, I got to be protected, man.
Well,
that coronavirus is everywhere.
Listen, I get it. People are going to be calling in. I get it. But really, that's not necessary. I really don't think that's necessary. But we're going to wrap up this recording portion of it. We've got, we want to thank Mr. Sean Long, RGT85. Check him out, youtube.com/RGT85. And check out his book over on Amazon. And if you want an autographed one that hopefully will say the right name on it, you guys can go check it out.
No problem.
You can hopefully get it. Check it out. And we also want to thank Mr. Cool Toy himself, Douglas Smith, for joining us. Check him out.
Yep.
YouTube.
Yeah, check out Sean's book. It's great.
youtube.com/cooltoy, and you will definitely, hopefully, get a pick from him next week. Maybe something that he doesn't have. And of course, we've got the swan virus. I mean, the coronavirus guy, Mr. Planamento. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Whoa. It's a great book. Great book.
Read it later, not during the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Glen Planamento, youtube.com/Glen's Retro Show. Make sure you head over to Kickstarter and get behind his Kickstarter, because you want to get that Atari Yokes for the Star Wars machines. Glenn, that'll also work. Correct me if I'm wrong. That'll also work for the Legends, or is this just
the plan is the plan is to have it working with Arcade 1-Up, the Legends Ultimate, and also PC, Pi, Mac, or any device that'll accept a USB analog joystick or a USB mouse. That should work for pretty much anything.
Perfect.
That's the goal.
Wow. So there you guys have it. Go check it out. And guys, make sure you subscribe to the channels. We'll be posting all this up on YouTube as we do every week. We appreciate everybody coming in here. And those of you that are still sticking around, stay on. We're going to get you guys to call in and ask your questions. And hopefully he won't be wearing that stupid mask when we go into post-show. But I can't promise anything. That's just the nature of this show, and things get out of control when we end this. So we'll see you guys next week for more here of the Retro Buzz. And wait, Glenn, who do we have next week?
Next week will be a surprise guest. I don't want to give it away just yet.
I know we're booked through the end of February. I know we're booked through the end of February.
Yes, next week is a surprise guest.
Okay,
surprise guest.
Surprise guest.
You have to tune in to see.
All right.
Tune in to see.
All right. We'll see you guys next week here on the Retro Buzz.